Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have a sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. So just call me brother when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on when you're not strong. I'll help you carry on, it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on.
Welcome to what may be perhaps the City of Westland's first virtual town hall meeting. We're starting to get pretty good at these virtual meetings, and tonight's format, Zoom, is something that most of us are getting pretty comfortable with. Our topic tonight is overcoming the COVID pandemic. And before we get started, two quick things is first of all, I want to apologize that we had to reschedule the town hall. Last week when we had it scheduled, we had some severe weather came through town, and because most of our panelists are working from remote locations, we were a little nervous about potentially losing some internet, and also for our residents too. So, but with that said, we're here tonight. We're ready to go. We've got a great lineup in front of us. We're going to start off tonight's tonight's town hall with I'd ask for a moment of silence. One of the things that we're going to have to do at a community level when the time is right is really pause and take a few. We're going to have to pause and just really think about and spend some time memorializing the residents in the City of Westland that we've lost to this horrible COVID-19 pandemic. As of today, the City of Westland has had 835 positive cases of COVID-19. And as of tonight, we have lost 84 of our friends and neighbors to this disease. So what I'm going to ask everybody is if we can just take a moment of silence before we get started tonight in memory of those 84 residents that we've lost to this pandemic. Okay, thank you. And like I said, at some point when the time is right, the community is, we're going to work to do something in Westland to definitely honor the folks that we've lost. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later in the summer. So we're going to start off tonight. You know, it's hard to believe is that this pandemic started back in March. And I know that I don't have the exact date in front of me where the first Michiganian resident tested positive, but I know that it started in March. On March 23rd was when the governor, through one of several executive orders, basically had shut down the state to all non-essential workers. So at that point, we had closed the city hall and all of our city buildings to the public. We did still have, a small amount of employees working to process Dropbox payments and online services. At the time, we really didn't know how long that was going to last, so we were kind of keeping all of our employees kind of at our arm's reach. And then as this pandemic played out even more, on May 1st, after sitting down with our city unions, we announced some major furloughs, and we ended up furloughing probably about 65% of our non-public safety staff throughout the city. And then shortly thereafter, the library worked out a letter of understanding with their union, and they furloughed their employees as well. And the 18th District Court worked with their employee groups to do furloughs, and we really had a shoestring administration with employees keeping things going for us. One of the things that we did right away was what I did was I named our fire chief, Mike Stratner, our emergency preparedness coordinator for all COVID-19 related issues. And at that point, he took over, and he's done an incredible job ever since. We're going to hear from him in just a few minutes. We opened up on the City of Westland's website a coronavirus response hub, and Craig Brown and his team have really done a good job of, first of all, getting that information up there in a timely manner. But now that we're a couple months into this pandemic, this has really turned into a very useful tool for our residents and our business owners. And if you have not had a chance to look at it yet, I would encourage you to go to the City of Westland website, and right from the homepage, you can click right on the coronavirus response hub, and this thing's updated every day with all the information that you need on testing and statistics and ways to stay safe. And so I really appreciate the folks in IT that have really done a good job keeping our residents up to date on that. Then one of the other things that we did, and this is something that we've learned in emergency situations, is probably communication is paramount. And we jumped right on communications through Craig. Welcome back, and the WLND team. We know them for the work that they do on cable, but they also do a great job of communicating in all the other mediums that the city uses now, and social media, and of course on WLND. But they also started drafting those daily briefings that you've seen come out. And at some point, we also started bringing in the business briefings with Aubrey Berman's help through the economic development team. And we're still doing those, and a lot of information is gathered from a lot of different sources. I believe that WLND is going to back off on those briefings now and do them, I believe, every other day. But we can certainly change that moving forward as we get into that. What was pretty amazing was just as this thing played out, just what really happened throughout our city. As the governor mentioned, she implemented her stay home, stay safe order. It really, for all intents and purposes, it brought our city to a standstill. Businesses started closing. The Westland Mall closed. Local hospitals were starting to reach capacity. We heard the stories about Beaumont in Wayne was switching over to all COVID-19 patients. A lot was really happening in a short period of time. But I got to tell you is that our residents really stepped up. They did a great job. They did stay home. You hardly saw any cars on the street. They did a great job of social distancing, and they've continued to do that today, washing their hands, wearing masks. And I think that that's why we started to see our numbers eventually stabilize, because our residents did do such a good job. We had to start doing things like canceling events, and one of the things that really broke my heart was when we had to cancel our Blues, Brews, and Barbecue event for this fall, because that's pretty much our signature event for the year that we really bring the community together on. So at this point, we've had to cancel pretty much all city events right through the Blues, Brews, and Barbecue, and hopefully we'll still have time in the fall to maybe still do a couple events. That's something we'll take a look at. But the one thing that I think that really was amazing during the whole COVID pandemic as it played out in its initial phase was the work of our first responders. Because earlier when I mentioned that the furloughs that we did, there were no furloughs at the police department or the fire department, and they were actually working around the clock. And the fire chief is going to talk a little bit about what that looked like on the fire side, and Chief Jed Ruzek's going to talk a little bit about what that looked like on the police department side. But they really stepped up like they always do. There are local heroes. But one of the things that I think was really amazing, not only in Westland, but across the nation, is that with this emergency, we had a whole new front line of heroes that emerged. Doctors and nurses, they were working around the clock in extremely difficult situations in the very beginning with very little safety precautions in place. But, we also saw people like grocery store cashiers and stock boys and carry out restaurants. And, these across our nation are some of our least paid employees, but they very quickly became some of our most important. And I think as we look back on this and we think about those frontline heroes, we're definitely going to have to think about all those folks that were deemed essential through the governor's orders or with the businesses that they worked for. It was really something amazing to see all these new heroes emerged. And we had those type of heroes right here in the city of Westland. It doesn't take much in the city of Westland for our compassionate nature to take over. And we saw it almost immediately. Wayne Westland School District stepped up to the plate, and as the kids had to be sent home as the schools closed, they stepped up and they made sure that those families were still fed that were part of the programs there. And they've been delivering food out of their parking lot ever since. The Meals on Wheels program, which is funded through Wayne County, never stopped they didn't miss a single day. They kept Meals on Wheels going to those homebound seniors, and they still are today. We saw Gleaners come into the city of Westland and do distributions of food to families and those in need at the Jefferson Barnes Center. The Salvation Army stepped up like they always do. And we even had the good folks from Detroit Rescue Mission came to Westland and delivered food boxes to a lot of our seniors in our senior high rises. And it was just something that was just amazing. And we actually, for those folks that come back and watch tonight's town hall meeting on WLND, we actually have a video of a lot of the things that I just mentioned that would definitely be worth watching. So, but the good news is that, with all of that said, is that things have slowly gotten better. We did see our numbers in Westland, and all throughout Wayne County and all throughout this state. They did stabilize, and I think that folks staying at home, staying safe, social distancing, I think it really did work. The unfortunate deaths in our community have slowed. We unfortunately lost another resident today, but those numbers really have slowed over the last several weeks. And I think that has to do with a lot more people getting tested. And we did testing right here in the city of Westland and JCPenney's parking lot. And I think that the more people that got tested, that came back positive, quarantined themselves, and they did all the right things, which are probably at the end of the day, they probably won't realize it, but they really did their part in saving a lot of people's lives. On June 1st, we did reopen City Hall as we started to get statistics and we saw that things were slowing down. We opened up City Hall, we opened up the Jefferson Barnes Community Vitality Center, and our golf course opened up as well too. And so what that really does is it kind of brings us to tonight. So we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what we've where we were at, kind of where we're at today, and where we're going to go in the future. So we have a full lineup. Our first speaker tonight is going to be Fire Chief Mike Stratner. And like I said, the chief has been doing an incredible job serving as the city's emergency preparedness coordinator. I know you've seen him on TV. He's been doing updates, and he's been at just about everything. So with that, Chief, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Mayor. And again, I'm Mike Stratner, the City of Westland Fire Chief and the city's emergency preparedness coordinator. I'd like to start off by thanking the Westland residents that offered their support and the numerous donations to both the police and fire departments during the COVID response efforts. As a chief, I cannot tell you how much these acts of kindness were well received by both the police officers and the firefighters, and really how much it contributes to lifting the overall morale of the department, because it was a very difficult period for the guys, very stressful period for our police and firefighters, and these acts of kindness just were very, very generous. I'd also like to thank the Ford Motor Company and Alpha USA for their donations of PPE, which helped protect our frontline workers here in the city of Westland. And I know that there's numerous other organizations and local businesses that made donations. And again, we cannot thank you enough for all the support that you showed to our police officers and firefighters during this COVID response. And as the city's emergency preparedness coordinator, I would like to personally thank the city administration, the city council, and all the department heads for their support and efforts that through the great teamwork of the city has gotten us to where we are today with the response and reopening plan for the city of Westland. It truly was a team effort, and it was very, very well received by everybody. Early on, the City of Westland administration met with members of council, and we started discussing COVID-19 and really how it was going to impact Westland. COVID was moving toward our area. The first thing the fire department had to do, and really every department had to do, was assess their PPE stock and what needs may have come for the coming events. We've learned from watching other countries how bad it could get, but really nobody knew how bad it would be. So there was really no clear picture of the amount that would be enough to properly respond, as no one predicted how hard it would hit our city, and it hit Westland and Wayne County very hard as we've seen the numbers. So early on in our efforts, so many communities were requesting PPE through our local vendors that new strategies needed to be pursued to make sure we had enough to protect our frontline workers. We saw as the events unfolded that PPE shortage was a true problem across the country, really across the globe, and many facilities were in crisis mode trying to protect their staff. Westland early on was very proactive through their PPE acquisition, and throughout these events, all of our frontline workers and all the departments had the necessary PPE to stay safe while coming to work and serving the residents of Westland. Even though we had the proper PPE and training, Westland Fire Department still had 4 members get sick with COVID. And as of the other day, I'd have been happy to report that all of them are back to work, but we now have one off work again, sick with COVID. He is asymptomatic, but he's testing positive. It's not a good environment to bring him back to. We have to keep the residents and the staff safe. So we do have 1 member off at this time with COVID. Some of the stuff that we're going to talk about tonight is really a lot of the data. One of the things that the fire department does is we track a tremendous amount of data. We report this data on a national level to make sure it's being federally reported. And certainly with our COVID data, we began tracking that and reporting it to the federal level on March 20th. So a lot of this data that I'm going to talk about on these charts that you see, we began tracking on March 20th, and we still track today. So as the city's COVID response really started to unfold, our department had to make constant adjustments to properly respond to our calls for service. The first change we had to make was to the department's response capabilities. On a daily average, the department responds with 4 transporting paramedic units that you see throughout the city. To better handle these calls for service, we added a 5th transporting rescue to see where that was going to get us, which obviously created additional manpower that we had to bring in on a daily basis. When we talk about Westland Fire's call volume, we have a daily average of about 35 calls for service. Most of these require the response of multiple vehicles. So as our COVID response ramped up, the department was seeing average days with calls above 40, and the chart can kind of help explain that many of these were COVID positive or COVID suspect calls that we were responding to almost every single day. And it is important to note that these charts are only EMS data. These aren't even covering our fire-related responses. So when we talk about COVID suspect or COVID positive, the way those calls were defined were through our 911 operators and our response crews that defined COVID positive or COVID suspect based on what the patient was complaining of and what our responders were seeing. And we were collecting that data and we were reporting that data to the federal level through a national reporting system. The City of Westland, the emergency management, falls under the umbrella of Wayne County Emergency Management and the State of Michigan Emergency Management divisions. So throughout these events, there was cooperation between the City of Westland, the state, and our local and our Wayne County that facilitated the delivery of PPE supplies from the national stockpile that you may have heard of on the news. They helped guide the response efforts throughout Wayne County and certainly Westland as well. The fire department's also guided by the Michigan Department of Health and Human Resources and our local medical control directors. So almost daily, new protocols and response capabilities were being put into place that I've never witnessed in my 27 years as a healthcare provider. These changes were rapid and they required constant daily training of our firefighters to keep them abreast of best practices. And these changes were coming very, very rapidly. And so were really the changes within Westland were coming very rapid. Typically, the fire department responds to local hospitals unless the call's trauma or burn related. We're going to take you to U of M or Detroit Receiving. But as these COVID calls really spiked in our area, local hospitals were overwhelmed. They had surge policies in place that were also being tasked. And what was once take the patient to the closest hospital became taking the patient anywhere there's a bed available. It doesn't matter where it's at in our area, just take them. So we were going to U of M, we were going to Dearborn, we were going to Taylor. Our firefighters were going everywhere there was a bed available. So obviously this caused increased response times, increased hospital turnaround times, and this affected every single fire department in our area. But it also highlights the importance of the changes we made early on to our own response capabilities to continue to deliver the service to the citizens that they deserve. And with each COVID rescue call, it required a deep cleaning and sanitizing of the rescue vehicle while at the hospital because they were ready for the next call on the way back from the hospital. We developed sanitizing procedures citywide for our public safety departments and our essential workers and had several city buildings professionally sanitized to assure that our workforce, that the environment they were required to work in was as safe as possible. The information displayed on this map is COVID response data specific to the areas of Westland. And this chart is really telling about, it gives a good picture of what the COVID infection spread looked like. And again, this data was collected from March 20th through June 4th. At no time during these events did we ever disclose addresses. There was communication out there that people want to address. That's private information. We utilize the addresses to get a sense of how much this was spreading through our community. We know that residents have a right to their privacy. So internally, we use this data to identify hotspots or areas that cause increased infection spread rates in our city. This map's really similar to what you've seen through the state, national, and various global maps that were created. While I'll discuss some of the details of this map again, what is important to note is that this virus was widespread throughout the city. Each city began to have COVID cases identified. The Wayne County Department of Public Health would assign contact tracing teams to interview each individual and then trace those people in places they've been. The health department would contact those people in places and give information about how to proceed or clean their facilities. And we see today that literally they're going to be hiring thousands of contact tracers to fulfill that same role as this virus has spread so much throughout the country. That's why there's important messages out there about answer your phone. It might be the health department letting you know you've been exposed to somebody with COVID or you've been in a place where there was COVID. Those contact tracers are really the ones who made contact with these facilities through the patient interviews once they were identified as COVID positive. In referring to the map, it's already been stated that COVID was widespread. There are concentrations if you look in the Norwayne district, as well as many of our apartment areas throughout the city. The other areas of concern are the red areas, which fall right on top of our long-term care facilities. We knew we know long-term care facilities house the most vulnerable populations in all of our cities, and nationally there were issues in protecting these residents. The map clearly shows hotspots right on top of our extended care skilled nursing facilities. So very early on during our COVID response, our department contacted each long-term care facility, and we spoke with either the administrator or the nurse manager in charge of the facility to address any issues or concerns that they have. The City of Westland has no oversight over long-term care facilities, as these facilities are state licensed agencies. They're inspected by the state and they're regulated by the state. But that didn't mean that through good communication, we weren't able to discuss policies and procedures that they had in place, and that most of these facilities shared their infectious disease plan with us and what their response was. We had very open discussion as to which facilities were testing residents, which were testing just their staff, or which were only testing their residents or staff that became sick. So we had a good picture early on in Westland of what each facility was doing. Each facility had their own criteria to work through. Each facility did have a plan, which is the most important thing that we were looking for, is what's your plan and how are you responding to that plan. Also during our conversations, we addressed any PPE needs, any training that they may need. And if there were PPE needs that they were needed, we were able to get them in contact with the proper county contacts to obtain some of that equipment through the national stockpile. So in total, as of June 14th reporting, Westland skilled nursing facilities had 239 COVID residents throughout our 5 facilities, which are Fort Chaplains, Four Seasons, Regency at Westland, Cherry Hill, and Westland Convalescent. Those are the 5 within our city that are responsible for reporting to the state. And in those 5 facilities, they had a total of 239 COVID residents. Many of these facilities had proper procedures in place as COVID began to spread in their facility to be able to separate COVID from non-COVID residents as per the Executive Order 2020-50, which guided the enhanced protections for residents and staff of long-term care facilities during the COVID-19 pandemic. And sometime after our discussion with each facility, the county worked with the National Guard medical teams, and they began filling in the gaps of testing with each facility in Wayne County. And they also assured compliance with executive orders and other guidelines that were put in place to properly protect their residents and staff. And when we see today was really, this week was when they really first started reporting the number of sick patients, the number of deaths, the number of sick staff, the number of staff deaths for each facility, and that's available at michigan.gov coronavirus. Some interesting information. Certainly this chart's the one that is very important for us to understand. It's really what brings us here tonight, is it's this COVID was devastating to our country. And, unfortunately, the city of Westland lost 84 residents as a result of COVID. So, this chart really just expresses one of the many sad realities of COVID. This data was not tracked by the city of Westland. Rather, this data comes specifically from the county through Department of Public Health. So what would happen is, after each loss, the county's executive office would contact the mayor's office for official notification of a death in their city. The only information released to a local leader was the number of confirmed deaths, the race, the sex, and the age. And Westland had its first reported death on March 28th, and the highest daily death was on April 21st, with a total of 7 lives lost. So as we sit today at June 16th, Westland has lost a total of 84 Westland residents of the 835 total confirmed COVID cases for our city. If you want to compare that to some other Wayne County cities similar in population, Dearborn had 935 COVID cases with 109 lives lost, and Livonia had 881 COVID cases with 160 lives lost. On June 1st, with the kind of the governor announced the remaining portions of the state have entered in the phase 4 of the Michigan Safe Start Plan, which is the improving phase. Hopefully, we keep hearing that soon they'll be announced that the state can move into phase 5, which is containment. But all that comes with a trend down in data, which is why this slide's important. It's going to show you some spikes, but it's really going to show you that data is trending down. I know this original town hall was scheduled for last last week. Since then, the city of Westland has only had 16 confirmed cases of COVID. So you're only seeing, 2 or less a day. As you can see a trend down. It's not the high numbers like we were getting. So all this data I've shared with you helped guide the city into really the mayor's reopening plan for June 1st for the city of Westland. Through all our resources locally and statewide, the decision to reopen was really based on solid data that reflected a positive outlook on cases trending down. While there's some spikes in confirmed cases, they're consistent really with local COVID testing in our area. And they're to be expected as people are getting tested out of precaution or as a condition of returning to their own employment as businesses start to reopen and their employers want to get tested. Locally, our fire crews have reported that hospitals are no longer operating at surge capacity. Local EMS protocols are returning to normal. They're not quite there, but our department level operating staffing matrix is back to our pre-COVID levels. And, in closing, really out of any crisis, there's lessons to learn to better prepare for future events. There were few cities across the nation that had the proper PPE to meet demand for an infectious disease response. These types of responses occur in the emergency medical service, but they are not common to the pre-hospital EMS agencies. Early on, all our typical vendors were out of stock of any PPE we would require for this magnitude of response. Again, nobody knew how bad it was going to hit our area. Cities were literally competing with each other and scrambling to secure the equipment needed as the response efforts ramped up. We were very fortunate and had a great deal of support from the city administration. Our city administration had several state and national contacts that connected us with the proper suppliers to acquire really what we needed. We were proactive and we ordered what we needed, and our PPE supplies lasted throughout this crisis, and the city of Westland never ran short on what was needed for their frontline workers. City of Westland was also proactive early on with creating a robust disinfecting program for all essential workers in the buildings they worked in. We understood that in these uncertain times, the most important element was making our essential workers feel safe coming to work. And as we move forward, we hope a second surge doesn't come. We hope another infectious disease does not come, but we're more prepared. The police department was awarded a Department of Justice grant for $76,000, which was to be used specifically for the purchase of PPE supplies and sanitation devices for our first responders and city buildings. The fire department duplicated that through a FEMA grant to purchase additional supplies that will contribute greatly to any future event. And really, in closing, I just want to cover one more thing. This is a question maybe some of you will have and don't ask is, how do I know if I had COVID or how do I know if I have COVID? And what's the difference between a viral test and what's the difference between an antibody test? So basically, a viral test is a nasal swab, and it's typically done at various drive-through testing sites, much like Westland hosted in the last few weeks. It can also be done in a doctor's office, and it's the most prevalent testing being conducted. And what that nasal swab viral test does is it shows you if you currently have COVID, and people can have COVID positive results without showing any symptoms. This is why there's that push for widespread testing. Between the Wayne and Westland fire departments, where I serve as chief for both, we had members test positive without symptoms and were put off duty until negative test results came back. We had a firefighter return to work with negative results who only later tested again positive, and he was put back off work even though he was asymptomatic. There's so much that has to be learned about this virus that we have to do what's right to protect our firefighters and our residents. The other form of testing that's common is antibody testing. This is where a blood sample is taken to look for antibodies to the virus that caused COVID. A positive test shows that you have antibodies from a past infection with the virus that causes COVID-19, or possibly from an infection with a related virus from the same family of viruses called coronaviruses, such as the one that causes the common cold. There's no clear evidence that suggests that if having antibodies to the virus that causes COVID-19 can protect someone from getting infected again, or if they do, how long this protection might last. These are the reasons why social distancing and masks are being recommended while in public places as they continue to study this virus, because we all read the news, there's new information daily coming out, and we need to just be cautious about what we do. So if you want to get tested for a viral sample via nasal swab to see if you currently have COVID, or you want an antibody test to see if you could have had it, You should first call your primary care physician because sometimes you need a referral or he'll give you direction as to where you can go. If you're looking for a testing site or other information, the City of Westland, as the mayor has said, is a great, great resource. It's updated daily. The IT team has done a fantastic job with that. And that's really, go to the city's webpage for any COVID information. And thank you very much.
Okay, Chief. As you can see, the chief has done a great job. His entire department has worked really hard through this, and their call volume at one point was up extremely high, and at the same time where they were, just imagine those calls. I mean, they knew when they were going out on calls. I mean, the dispatchers were doing some screening before our EMS was dispatched there. So in most of the cases, they knew when they were going to a house that the person was showing the symptoms of the virus. So, but they persevered. They did a great job, like they always do. And Chief, I think your leadership really helped us get through that portion of the pandemic. So next up, we're going to head over to Police Chief Jeff Jedrusik. Earlier today, they called him Jedrusik, so you can't be mad at me for butchering it, Chief. We're going to go over to Chief Jedrusik, and he's going to give us the take from the police department side of this. Chief?
All right, thank you, Mayor. So hello, citizens. I just wanted to talk about the police department's COVID response. So during the COVID-19 crisis, the Westland Police Department has remained open to the public. During this crisis, the police department was recognized as the 24-hour-a-day emergency headquarters for the city of Westland. Like Chief Stratner said, in the very early stages of the COVID crisis, PPE was very limited. There were also very few testing facilities available. So unfortunately, we had 8 employees at the Westland Police Department that contracted the COVID-19 virus. In order to protect our residents and also the employees of the police department, we quickly converted to an essential services policing model. The intent was to reduce the risk of COVID-19 exposure while still providing the essential police services to our community. Some of the immediate changes that took effect included the closure of our records bureau for non-essential services. Essential services were still done by appointment only. The reduction of police citizen contacts. We suspended our traffic enforcement details and our community policing program, and instead we proactively shift our focus to the neighborhoods and to the business checks of our community. We enacted internal safety measures such as employee social separation, the use of PPE, self-check guidelines, and professional cleaning of our employee work area and also the prisoner cell block. We also initiated a phone and online citizens reporting system. And then our work schedules changed so we were able to provide officers the ability to self-quarantine to avoid cross-contamination when necessary. Those immediate changes proved to be effective. The last reported COVID case we had in the police department was back on April 3rd. The plan allowed for our sick employees to fully recover, and currently all Westland Police employees are healthy and to return back to work. The COVID crisis has had a major effect on the criminal justice system as a whole. During the COVID crisis, district courts and circuit courts were forced to close throughout the state. The county jails throughout the state also announced they were no longer taking prisoners. These closures resulted in the issuance of appearance tickets and personal bonds for all nonviolent offenses. This will certainly back up the court system and future dockets throughout the state as we move forward. These changes required the Westland Police Department to begin policing a little differently than we normally do. When possible, we avoided making custodial arrests, knowing that housing prisoners together would cause an increased risk of COVID exposure and transmission. Throughout the crisis, the 18th District Court in Westland has been handling cases electronically. They held live hearings via Zoom and live stream their court proceedings through YouTube. During this time, the 18th District Court was still able to hold 345 misdemeanor arraignments and 52 felony arraignments. I did a comparison. If you look at the chart right there, I conducted a 2-month comparison of 2019 to our current 2020. As you can see, our overall calls for service declined by 14%. I believe this largely to be associated with the stay-at-home order. When people are at home, they are less likely to be involved in crimes and traffic crashes. The police department reduced self-initiated traffic stops by 98% and total citizen contacts by 57%. This change to our policing philosophy was to reduce the likelihood of COVID exposure. The most shocking reversed increase was a large jump in family troubles. The increase was 138%. I attribute this increase to the numerous stresses placed upon families during the stay-at-home crisis. We are also noticing a climb in calls for service since the governor loosened up the executive order. During the months of March and April, we were averaging approximately 61 calls per service per day. So far in June, we are now averaging 101 calls per service per day. This is a 60% increase just over the past 2 weeks. During the COVID crisis, there were a number of executive orders put into place. These orders put demands on our residents and our businesses like nothing we've ever seen before. The police department's strategy during this time was to work towards voluntary compliance versus criminal enforcement. Our businesses and our residents were great partners during these times. The voluntary compliance certainly helped Westland flatten the curve. As a department, we understood that crises like this caused sadness and depression for our residents. Along with the fire department, we participated in daily birthday and celebratory parades whenever possible. The hope was to cheer up our residents, birthdays, anniversaries, and things like that. And I did a quick check, and we were able to participate in 120 parades during that time. As the state moves towards opening back up, there are several protective measures that still need to remain in place. We have implemented additional work condition changes in order to protect the police department employees and also the residents that we serve. The following protective measures will still remain in place. We're doing daily building and cell block cleaning, daily employee health screening checks. PPE is provided to all of our employees and prisoners when they come in the building. Workspace separation and dividers are in place. We are going to continue the online and phone citizen reporting. We are social distancing within the police building, and whenever possible, we are going to social distance between the officers and the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. So as you can see, both police and fire really were at the front lines of this entire response, and I know that the chief touched on it, but they also found time in between their extremely high call volume to do compassionate things like do drive-bys for birthdays and graduations, and they did as much of that as they could, and we appreciate everybody that was not able to have that service, so they understood why. So we appreciate you guys and your departments trying to find time to do that as well. Our next speaker is going to be our City Council President Pro Tem, Mike Londo, and I have to thank both him and Council President Jim Hart. They've been in constant contact with my administration throughout the crisis. We've had a lot of phone calls and Zoom calls, and I've done as much as I can to keep the council updated with what was going on. And they really were in a tough situation because for the most part, the city council was not able to utilize City Hall, and they do have an office here where they meet residents, and it was tough for them to do their business like they normally do, but I give them credit. They did everything they could, and they shared as much information as they could, and probably nobody did more of that than our council president pro tem. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Londo.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mayor, for first of all hosting this open forum and allowing me to speak for a few minutes about the City Council's response to COVID-19. And our police chief and fire chief did a great job explaining, the job that they've done and their officers and their firefighters have done. So thank you from the City Council for all your efforts. Our City Council president is unavailable tonight, so I'll be filling in tonight, so you have to deal with me. On behalf of the Westland City Council, I'd like to welcome you to our portion. COVID-19 has had a lot of different impacts on how we do business. The council has been very proactive on working with the administration to make things effective, which meant we had to change the way we do business with regards to our business meetings. There's been a timeline in these changes, so why don't we take a look at the timeline. The timeline starts on March 16th, when the City Council voted to cancel our first meeting in April. And then on March 18th, Governor Whitmer issued an executive order to allow virtual meetings, which has been changed a few times. It is now EO 2020-75, and that's set to expire on June 30th. By the 3rd, we had our system put in place, and on the 13th, we held our first virtual meeting. This was a special meeting. The City Council President called this meeting with a short agenda so that we could maintain our 2 meetings a month and we could practice using this new format. On the 20th, we had our regularly scheduled meeting via Zoom with a loaded business agenda. Looking forward, we're going to return to in-person meetings, but that date is to be determined. Speaking of Zoom, what does Zoom look like? City of Westland had many virtual options at our disposal to conduct our business meetings. The City Council President and I, along with members of the Mayor's administration, worked with the IT department and ultimately decided to use the Zoom platform. It's important to note here in Westland, we did something extra. Residents could always log in via Zoom, and we also streamed all of our study sessions and City Council meetings live on YouTube. So you had multiple ways to participate, and if you wanted to, you could dial in via Zoom and make public comment. We made it as accessible as possible for everyone to participate. I know the city followed all Open Meetings Act laws for posting, but many of my colleagues joined me in sharing this information with the public to help get the word out on how residents could participate in our public meetings. Council wasn't the only area of government using virtual meetings to conduct business. Excuse me. As you can see, many boards and commissions had to adjust with us and conduct business virtually. Everything from the Planning Commission, the Library Board, the Downtown Development Authority, and many more had to change with us. So the question you ask is, where do we go next? The Council President's conditions for return are, first of all, we need to have a minimum of 25 persons permitted indoors. The idea that we've kind of bounced around would be we'd split the main chambers with 25 folks in there and 25 out in the lobby to make things effective, but also gives us a chance to recognize a citizen if they wish to speak. Number 2, we also need to have sensible, safe solutions for social distancing. And as it stands now, the EO 2075 is set to expire on June 30th. The governor, there's been some talk that she may elect to allow remote dial-in for selected members of boards, but we're not sure. We're not sure, but it's possible. So more to come on that. In closing, on behalf of all my colleagues on the Westland City Council, we ask that you stay safe, and we look forward to the time we can see you all in person again. Thanks again, Mayor.
Thank you, Council President Pro Tem. One of the things that the City Council did, besides using Zoom for their council meetings, was that we use the Zoom platform to also do our budget deliberations for this year. And then we took a lot of meetings, a lot of time, a lot of information through this new technology. And it probably wasn't the perfect way to do it, just because it's hard to interact like we normally would with a free flow of ideas and concepts and deliberation. But I think that the City Council did a great job of working through that budget using Zoom technology, and it's something that the administration and I appreciate. So our next speaker is going to be the City of Westland's Personnel Director, and she has definitely had her hands full. Those of you that may not remember, Stephanie came to us from she worked for Ann Arbor Public Schools, and they probably never had anything like this happen to them when she was with the schools, but she did a great job. We had to work with our unions in a very short amount of time because our employees are covered under collective bargaining, and there's language in there that talks about layoffs. And but she's got a great working relationship with all of our union presidents, and in a very short period of time, we were able to put together a letter of understanding to temporary furlough our staff. And that was probably the easy part of her job. Then she had to turn around and try to get all of those employees through the unemployment system. And then almost the same day that we announced our furlough plan, I tasked her with creating our come back to work plan. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to the City of Westland's Personnel Director, Stephanie Field. Stephanie?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak this evening. I will be providing an overview of our employee safety measures in the city's reopening of city facilities plan. On June 1st, the City of Westland implemented its COVID-19 plan for reopening of city's facilities. You'll be able to find a copy of this plan on the city's website. During phase 1, City Hall reopened June 1st to the public with employees working on site to service residents and visitors from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Jefferson Barnes Center returned all its furloughed employees full-time to service residents and program participants full-time and able to communicate by phone and email with them. The golf course was also open during this first phase. As we move into phase 2, the focus will be opening other city facilities and park amenities. This will be based opening safely to the public and only when it can be done safely. During the final phase and phase 3, the goal is to be ready to allow the Westland City Council to conduct its July 6th meeting at City Hall, as well as focusing on the ability to begin pavilion and room rentals. City Hall is equipped with 3 employee checkpoints for protective safety measures for employees. The checkpoints include face masks, gloves, hand sanitizers, disinfectant wipes are available to employees as they enter the building. Employees must complete a daily self-screening prior to entering the main work area. This screening includes daily temperature checks and the completion of online employee entry screening questionnaire consisting of 4 COVID-19 questions as required by the Wayne County Health Department. The DPS employees are verbally screened by their supervisors daily prior to entering the workplace. Employee workstations have been equipped and with the cubicles with safety shields. Hand sanitizers and wipes have been placed throughout all work areas, break rooms, conference rooms, and Devin Adams will be going into more detail during his presentation on what City Hall has prepared for its employees and residents. As an additional safety measure, all City Hall staff will be wearing masks throughout the workday when moving around City Hall and interacting with residents and visitors at the front counter. As part of the reopening plan, a tentative schedule of reopening dates has been drafted. The document will be updated if and when anticipated reopening dates change. All department heads have provided reopening plans for their respective departments and programs, which you'll be able to find in the city's reopening of facilities plan on the city's website. Protecting the health of our employees requires the implementation of best practices. We start with education for the employees, health monitoring, personal protective equipment, as I described previously, the barriers, the plexiglass and sneeze guards, which have been installed to the employee workstations, hand sanitizers at each station, as I mentioned, enhanced cleaning and disinfecting of facilities, cleaning and disinfecting of tools and equipment, and numerous signage that we have put around City Hall for visitors and for employees. For the protection of the employees, all residents and visitors will be provided with face masks as they enter the building. It is highly encouraged that residents and visitors wear a face mask or covering of some sort while doing business in city buildings. All visitors doing business beyond the front counter will be required to wear a mask while in the employee work area and walking through the employee workstation area. In addition, the city's plan covers employee requirements of enhanced social distancing, enhanced hygiene, which includes frequent hand washing, covering coughs and sneezes, avoid touching your face and hands, and wiping your phones. Enhanced cleaning and disinfecting of surfaces, equipment, and other elements of work environments will be performed daily, and commonly used areas are wiped down throughout the day. Before I hand the microphone over to the mayor for our next speaker, I would like to thank all the employees for their hard work, flexibility, and understanding during the city's transition to provide a safer work environment for everyone. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. And as Stephanie mentioned, the City of Westland's COVID-19 response plan and our reopening of city facility plans is available on the City of Westland's website. And as Stephanie mentioned, it'll continue to be, that document will continue to be updated as we move forward and announce more openings and share more information. But it's a great document, and we've actually been asked by several cities now to share it with them. So we always try to share as much information as we can with our surrounding cities, and they do the same for us. So Stephanie, thanks for your work on this. And I know those communities that reached out to us, they appreciated too. It gave them a good place to start from. We put these implementations in place at City Hall, and I have to tell you, I was probably a little surprised on June 1st with how many residents that we had that actually came in, and they haven't stopped. So the volumes really picked up. For the most part, our residents and customers coming into City Hall are abiding by all of our new social distancing rules, and for the most part, they're also wearing masks in the building as well. And we certainly couldn't be open for business without the work that Devin Adams did to help prepare the city. So with this, I'm going to pass it over to Devin to bring you up to speed on his part in this.
All right, Mayor, thank you. And good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight as well. I will be conducting a brief overview of all back to work solutions at City Hall, all of which aims to enhance the safety of our residents, employees, and business partners when conducting city business in person. So once residents and business partners enter City Hall, they'll be greeted by a personal protection equipment station, which can be found in the middle of the front lobby. This station includes free masks and gloves, along with hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes, and handout information regarding COVID-19. Once residents and business partners enter our front counter area, our new social distancing signage and floor graphics are highly visible. These items will help direct the flow of traffic while keeping all patrons at a safe distance from each other. With this, our front counter is now fully equipped with 42-inch tabletop shields, which covers the entire length of the counter, again, ensuring that city business in person can be conducted as safely as possible. I know that the shields are tough to see on the attached photos, but I assure you they are there. To reiterate what our Human Resource Director, Stephanie Field, touched on earlier, as an additional safety measurement, all City Hall staff will be wearing masks throughout the workday, especially when interacting with customers at the front counter, as shown on the slide. With regards to staff solutions, please see the attached photo for reference. Each clerical workspace is furnished with 18-inch cubicle shields and shared sanitizers and wipes. This further grants employees who work closely with one another the comfort required during these uncertain times. Additionally, and as an effort to decrease the need for residents to touch surfaces, including door handles, most doors inside of City Hall will be propped open, while some, including bathroom doors, now have hands-free door openers as shown above. Lastly, and before I pass the microphone back to the mayor and to our next speaker, I wanted to add that while virtual meetings held via Zoom are highly encouraged, when the need for in-person meetings become evident, all City Hall conference rooms have been altered to only allow for minimum capacity per the guidelines set by the state of Michigan. This also remains true for our employee break rooms and all building restrooms. So that was just a brief overview of everything that we have together here at City Hall. So I'll pass it back over to the mayor. Thank you.
Okay, Devin, great job. For those of you that don't know Devin serves as the City of Westland's purchasing director. And if you ever saw the movie Shawshank Redemption, you remember Morgan Freeman was the guy that knew how to get things. Well, that's one of the many hats that Devin wears for the City of Westland. And he really did a good job of going out there and securing, first of all, finding and then securing all the PPE that we've been able to get and all these enhancements to make City Hall and our other buildings safe. He was able to do that and also to get it done in a very short period of time. So nice job, Devin. Next up is going to be our facilities director, Vic Barra. Vic has played an important role in throughout the entire pandemic. Actually, when I first started hearing about this, I kind of tasked Vic to find out more about it for me as it was first starting to come down the line, and he sat in on a couple meetings. Then certainly at some point we had to turn it over to the fire department. But Vic played a major role working with Devin to secure our buildings and to make them safe and our amenities safe. So with that, I'll pass it over to City of Westland's facility director, Vic Barra.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I got to speak out because nobody else has said it. What a joy it's been and a pleasure and an honor to work with this team on this response at this terrible time in our community. And it's just been a fantastic experience. A lot of what I would share, they've already said. So I'm just going to try to cut to the things that we're doing. Let's talk about our parks. Mayor, you wisely closed down all of our park systems because of this pandemic at the end of March. And of course, we recently reopened all of them, and our DPS crews have come to the pump and made sure that our parks are open to the public so they can get some exercise and enjoy some things. Green space and walking paths remained open during the period to allow for exercise. However, we always encourage people to social distance and make sure they were following the guidelines of the CDC and the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. All park amenities were reopened on June 5th, and all the equipment was reinstalled. We took down some basketball hoops because we found out our young folks, they still wanted to gather and get into a game of basketball. And of course, we unfortunately, being the parents that we are, had to put a stop to that. So we took those down, but they've all been reinstalled at this point. Slide, please. Okay, mitigation measures underway. Social distancing protocols were established, as Stephanie and Devin clearly laid out for everybody. Daily cleaning and disinfecting practices, focusing on frequently used public and employee touch points and surfaces, have been addressed daily. Craig's team from the IT department has been going around every day cleaning door handles and making sure that we're all comfortable and safe. HVAC filtration systems are under review at all of our city facilities to ensure that the highest level of particulate contaminant are collected. City Hall, I'm proud to say, is already, because we have a newer building, the highest level of filtration, which is capturing any contaminants coming in up to and including, hopefully, the coronavirus. Fogging applications have been deployed throughout many of our facilities using hospital-grade disinfectant prior to the reopening of our buildings to the public. The process has been completed at the following locations, with others scheduled for the upcoming weeks. We've already done City Hall, not once but twice. Jefferson Barnes Community Vitality Center has been fogged. The police department has been fogged throughout its entire building, as well as its prisoner containment areas. And the DPS and Fire Administration building has also been fogged. This is not the same fogging you see on CNN, where they're going down the middle of the street spraying whatever they think is going to kill this virus. These are products that are approved by the CDC, as well as their material safety data sheets available for the employees to understand what products we've deployed in the workspace. So all this information is available, and I'd be more than happy to share that later on if anybody has any questions. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Okay, Vic. Thank you for your hard work, and you've still got quite a bit of work ahead of you. So we appreciate everything you've done to do this, and also thank you for recognizing the team, because as you're seeing as the town hall is moving forward tonight, that this really was and continues to be a team effort. Our next speaker is going to be the City of Westland's Housing and Community Development Director, Joanne Barnes. Joanne is the director that oversees the Jefferson Barnes facility. So, Joanne? Hopefully we didn't lose Joanne. I saw her on there just a few minutes ago.
There we go.
There she is. Sorry for calling you Joanne Barnes. I've never done that before. So.
That's okay.
All right. Thanks, Joanne.
No worries. But good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to the viewers who are tuning in tonight. The Jefferson Barnes Community Vitality Center, we have continued activities throughout this entire time. With the last Monday in March, Gleaner's food distribution began at Jefferson Barnes Center, and it continues every other Monday. As of now, we are planning to continue the food distribution through the end of August. As I said, it's every other Monday. It was this Monday. The next will be June 29th, and then going into July and August from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Anybody can come and collect this food. There's no requests for income verification or anything of that sort, and it's always produce, milk, and meats, as well as canned goods. As Mayor Wild shared, the Meals on Wheels program has continued to be distributed for at-home seniors. Every Monday out of Jefferson Barnes, the volunteers come and pick up the food and distribute for the seniors a week's supply of food. Our commodity foods distribution continues, and our next distribution date will be this Friday from 10 until noon. Again, that's for Westland residents who live north of Michigan Avenue. And again, we're not asking for income information at this time. Anybody can come and collect the commodity foods. Also, currently, our housing and community development program participants can drop off and collect documentation. We have continued to administer the housing voucher and community development programs throughout this crisis. And a lot of that is in thanks to many waivers that have been put into place by the Department of Housing and Community Development. Beginning on July 27th, the Jefferson Barnes Community Center will be open for all business. Our housing staff and community development staff will again meet with clients, and all of the protocols will be in place for safe meetings, including everything that Stephanie and Devin spoke about. We have the plastic shielding up to keep everybody safe who comes into the building. But what I'm really happy to be able to share is that we're planning to move forward with our summer camps. This year they will be 4-week camps rather than 7 or 8-week camps, and they will run from July 27th through August 20th. That includes Hagera Health, our Jefferson Barnes Learning Lab, the Great Future Summer Program, which includes the Meet Up, Eat Up Lunch Program, the Norway Boxing Gym, and the Library Reading Program. One of the things that continues strongly are the community gardens that are out throughout the Norway community. We actually have 3 of them, and volunteers are always welcome. I will provide some contact information at the end. One of the things that came out of this crisis, this pandemic, is the CARES Act that many people have heard about in the news. The City of Westland, through the Community Development Block Grant Program, received federal funds for programs to assist low to moderate income families and businesses whose income has been negatively affected by the COVID crisis. Low-income families and businesses can apply for these programs at the City of Westland website, cityofwestland.com. We have 3 programs that City Council and the Mayor approved to use the funding for. The first is our Rent and Mortgage Relief Fund. This program can provide up to 3 months of rent or mortgage payments for people who have had job loss due to the changes in the economy or due to medical costs for COVID-19 care. Preference is given to applicants who deferred rent and mortgage payments during the moratorium, and payments will be made directly to rental owners or mortgage companies. The application process, as I said, is through the city's website, and it's ongoing, and we will continue to process applications until the funds are no longer available. The second program under the CARES Act is PPE Equipment Program. This can provide masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer. Its priority is to the most vulnerable Westland residents and organizations, such as elderly, people with disabilities, homeless, and caregivers for someone with COVID-19. It's also available to employers of essential activities, such as small employers that have less than 10 employees or nonprofit organizations. We've had several nonprofit organizations reach out to us, but again, just like with the rent and mortgage program, The application process will remain open until we no longer have the PPE to provide to the public. The third part of the program will be explained. It's for small business grants, and this will be explained by Aubrey Berman, our Economic Development Director. For more information regarding any of the CARES Act programs, you can contact us at 734-595-0288, or you can go to the City of Westland website for more information. If you're looking for information regarding the upcoming activities at the Jefferson Barnes Community Center, the best bet is to go to social media, whether it be through the City of Westland, the Jefferson Barnes Community Vitality Center, or even the Norway Community Citizens Council. All of their Facebook and Instagram social media contains all of the information. Thank you, Mayor. And it is, as Vic said, it is a good thing, all of us working together to minimize the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic.
All right. Well, thank you, Joanne, and thank you to your staff. You know, Joanne and her staff, like here at City Hall, we never really shut down. They worked. They had a small staff, but they kept business going. With even though the Jefferson Barnes Center wasn't open to the public, they continued to work, and they have all the way through. So, nice job and great job on a nice, smooth reopening, too, Joanne. So next week, we've talked a lot about the city, and our next speaker is going to be our Economic Development Director, Aubrey Berman, and she's played an important role, first of all, helping out on the city's communication, and you probably have seen her business briefs, and I know she's going to talk a little bit more about her role in the CARES Act grants, but she's also been tasked with trying to do everything in her power to kickstart our local economy, and I'll let her talk about some of her efforts. Aubrey?
Thank you, Mayor. As the Mayor said, when the pandemic first started, the economic development team was focused on curating the information and resources available from the federal, state, and local level in order to assist our local business community in navigating and capitalizing on the opportunities that were available to them. We released bi-weekly business briefings that included updates on funding opportunities, as well as business operating restrictions and directive from the state and federal governments in order to keep our community business members up to date. As Joanne touched on earlier, when we received word that Westland would be provided additional CDBG funding under the CARES Act, we started strategizing right away on how we could ensure that this allocation had the greatest impact on our local economy. And we agreed that an employee retention component would benefit both our business owners and our residents. So we borrowed components from the Michigan Small Business Grant Program and made adjustments to adhere to HUD's guidelines, and also to best suit our unique goals of promoting economic stability right here in the city of Westland. And thanks to the support and the mayor and the Westland City Council, we were able to get a plan together and up and running for all of these programs very quickly, and they launched on June 3rd. The small business grants are available to Westland businesses who have suffered a loss of revenue due to the pandemic and who have or plan to retain staffing levels. This ensures that we not only provide support to our small businesses, but also maximize the impact by combating job loss. I know that this slide says that the deadline to apply is June 17th, but we actually made an 11th hour extension and change. So we are going to extend that deadline until midnight on Sunday, June 21st. A lot of businesses just reopened this week, and a lot are going to continue to open over the next few days. And so we want to make sure that we give them enough time to get their documents in order, and that we can reach as many businesses as possible with these fundings. So as we shift away from an active pandemic and economic shutdown, we are refocusing our efforts towards the restart and recovery of our economy. Our team has been working closely with Wayne County's economic development staff, along with the Westland Chamber of Commerce. I know Gretchen's going to talk in a few minutes, but also our counterparts in other communities as part of a workplace reentry strategy group. And we meet weekly to identify the needs in our various communities and provide the county with input on how to best allocate the resources that they have at their level. As a result of those weekly meetings, we've created a reopening toolkit and guides to assist businesses with their operational plans so they can get back to work while maintaining the safety of their employees and customers. There's some examples of these here, and these are all available on our website as well. I'm also happy to say that as a result of those meetings and the feedback that we were able to give the county, we're very close to an announcement from them that they will be providing PPE toolkits to our small businesses, and we should be getting some more information about what the details of that are in the upcoming days. In addition to these resources, our group established a need for local policy adjustments in order to support our struggling businesses. And as such, here in Westland, we put together a proposal to allow us to handle requests for outdoor dining at the administration level. This was approved last night by the Westland City Council, so I thank the council for their support on that. And it's really just going to ensure that our restaurants can start making the necessary investments that they need to kind of maximize their capacity during this time, and also will allow our residents to take advantage of the beautiful weather we've been having so far early in this spring-summer season. Finally, we will be hosting a small business webinar on June 30th at 11 a.m. This webinar is the product of a partnership with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and Mayor Wild will be joined by Lou Mosca, who is a Forbes contributor and a podcast host with over 25 years of experience working with local small business owners. The webinar will focus on how to navigate your business during COVID-19, discuss government assistance programs, and provide tips and resources on how your business can recover quicker. There will be Q&As, so I encourage any small business owners that are interested, if you would like to attend, just email me at aberman@cityofwestland.com, and I will make sure to add you to the invite list for that. And just in closing, while there will undoubtedly be economic challenges ahead, we are finally getting to a place where we can start focusing on economic stabilization without compromising health and safety. And we will continue to work together to provide a streamlined, business-friendly atmosphere to ensure we can support our existing businesses and grow our commercial community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aubrey. And our next speaker that's going to continue our discussion on the local economy is the President and CEO of the Westland Chamber of Commerce, and that's Gretchen Heinecke. Gretchen, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody. My name is Gretchen Heinecke, and I'm the president of the Westland Chamber of Commerce. First, I would like to thank Mayor Wild and the City of Westland administration for having me tonight. The past 3 months have been a challenge for everyone, especially our businesses within the City of Westland and across the country. For the past 58 years, it has been the mission of the Westland Chamber of Commerce to support, stimulate, strengthen, and assist in the business growth of our members and community, and this will remain our mission. The Westland Chamber of Commerce has continued to provide our members and the community with information from the state of Michigan, Wayne County, the City of Westland, and the State and National Chamber of Commerce. Additionally, we have been providing resources to the business community via email, social media, and on our Westland Chamber of Commerce website. Resources that include ways to prepare your business to reopen and best practices to follow, how to apply for loans and grants through the CARES Act, how to gain access to PPE, and how to stay connected to customers while your business has been closed. During the past 3 months, the community has stepped up to support our Westland businesses, healthcare professionals, first responders, grocery store workers, educators, and other frontline workers. I want to personally say thank you to all those that have donated food and supplies. As businesses and restaurants begin to reopen, it is important that we as a community continue to support them. A couple important things to remember. Please be patient. Please stay positive and respectful. Please follow the new guidelines that businesses have posted, which will include social distancing and wearing a face mask. And please know that we are all still adjusting to this new normal. It will take all of us to follow these new guidelines to help restart and re-engage our economy. As a lifelong Westland resident, I know that we can come together and support all of our businesses. As we know from the daily and weekly briefings from the governor, things are changing rapidly. Information on how the economy is reopening and re-engaging is outlined in the MI Safe Start Plan. This plan outlines the phases that the state is going through as Michigan is safely reopening. It includes what work can start during these phases and what factors determine progression into the next phase. If you have questions about restarting your business or if you're looking for additional resources, please reach out to the Westland Chamber of Commerce and we would be happy to help you. Thank you again for supporting our local businesses.
All right. Well, thank you, Gretchen, for all that you do. And also the chamber also oversees the City of Westland's farmers market, which successfully opened and is continuing to get better and better as the season moves forward. So thank you for your work on that too, Gretchen. Gretchen brought up some good points, is that we really, probably more so than ever before, we have to support our local businesses. I can tell you, as a former small business owner, it's always been hard to be in business, and never more so than now, because a lot of businesses still haven't recovered from the recession, and with the loss of revenue that some businesses have lost over 2 months worth of revenue. And so our local economy depends a lot upon retail, and we've seen the changing face of retail with the online shopping that's kind of taken over. But at the end of the day, those retailers and our local businesses, if we don't support them now, I don't know what we're gonna do, because they really need us now. And I think that we've seen some businesses close that we never thought that we would see close. And like I said, it's hard to be in business now. And if you were on the ropes before COVID hit, you definitely are probably not going to bounce back from this. So we're going to do everything we can to work with the chamber to support our local businesses. So Gretchen, thank you for that continued partnership. So another aspect of this pandemic is a lot of people, I guess it's a little bit easy to forget about the people that are working behind the scenes. I think all of us know there's a very important election coming up here. We're right around the corner from a presidential election that may have the largest vote ever. And it seems like the rules are changing on a daily basis. So with that, we're going to ask our city clerk, Richard LeBlanc, to step up and talk about how his department has handled the COVID pandemic, but also how they're gearing up to make it easy for you to vote in the upcoming election. Richard.
Thank you, Mayor. This has been pretty informative, and I appreciate that you allowed me to be a part of the conversation. So as you mentioned, there's something big that's coming up in August, and it's going to be even larger in terms of our role and the city's role in November, and that's the election, of course. While we did experience a significant extended staffing reduction during the stay-home order, we're thankful that all 3 clerical staff members are now back to a full work week. And as anybody in City Hall can tell you, our election office, is in full election mode right now. Every day, the post office drops off about 700 absentee voter applications that we are beginning to process. Thus far, we're at slightly over 10,000, and this will be a record. You mentioned it, Mayor, a moment ago, that we expect to see a record turnout. But in addition to that, and I'll get back to the election in a moment, we're now receiving business license renewal applications. We have folks coming to the counter regarding pet licensing. Just so that if you're a pet owner and you want to license your pet, or if you're a business owner and you're not sure what to do since you've not accommodated the mandate that you secure a renewal of your business license, the city has decided that through the end of June, there's no penalties assessed for anything that's going to be late. We encourage you to come in. We're willing to work with you to get things processed in an efficient and timely manner. I would say, too, that requests for birth and death records had never been higher than during the high season, if you will, of the pandemic. We're working also with more than 50 fire and police employees regarding promotional opportunities. And we're also working toward the hiring of new firefighters and police officers. So all of that is in addition to the preparation for the August 4th election. That has us in City Hall every day. Like other directors in the city, the deputy clerk, the clerk, finance, budget, personnel, everybody's working essentially 7 days right now to try to get caught up. We're in here Monday through Sunday. And, when the mayor mentioned, some of the things that are perhaps unconventional regarding this election, due to COVID-19, the state of Michigan sent absentee ballot applications to all registered voters who were not part of our permanent list. What that means is that if you found in your mailbox something you didn't expect to receive, it's our hope that you'll take this opportunity to participate in mail voting, or commonly known as absent voter voting. It's going to make it easier on everybody. You'll have more time to peruse the ballot. We'll have more time to prepare for those who might insist on coming to a precinct. But I'm going to ask that if you received your absent voter application and you plan to submit it, please mail it or drop it off in the White City Hall mailbox at your very earliest opportunity. And if you submit your applications and don't receive your ballot within a reasonable time, contact us as soon as possible. Please don't wait a day or two before the election to ask why you haven't received it, because then it's going to be more difficult for you, more difficult for us. And I just want you to know that we're working inside City Hall every day to prepare these ballots. Our first mailing will soon go out. I mentioned that we're averaging about 700 applications received every day. When we do send this first mailing out, we expect that it's going to hit your mailboxes the first week of July. So if you submitted your application and you don't have a ballot within, just after the first week of July, give us a call and we'll let you know what we know. I also want to say that the city, working with Devin primarily, working with Vic, working with the mayor's office, has ordered personal protection equipment for all of our election officials. Our goal is for a safe and secure election experience for everyone, anyone who participates, whether you're an election worker or a person that is going to come to the precinct to vote. We want to make sure it's good for you. And by the way, if you would wish to become a paid election official who work for us on election day, please visit my portion of the city website. You'll find an application there, and we'll get you through some training and, slot you in. I think you'll find it very rewarding. It's a long day, but folks say they do like it, and it's only 2 days a year. So as I work down toward the end of this, I'd like to say that our staff, like others, is physically separated from one another as deemed necessary by those in charge. We're still processing requests in person at the counter. We're still addressing items electronically. Every service that the clerk's office is required or that you thought we would offer, we are offering. We're working full scale. And in conclusion, I'd just like to say that, the City of Westland employees from the mayor on down, we're working hard. We appreciate your support. We appreciate that the businesses need our help. We're all working together to get through this challenging time. And again, thanks for allowing me to be a part of this.
Thank you, Clerk LeBlanc. We appreciate the update on the election, and we wish you the best in the smooth primary election and the general election too in November. So our last speaker tonight, our cleanup hitter, is none other than our Westland Public Library Director, Ishwar Laxmanarian. And Ishwar, everybody, I think the burning question in town is, when is the library going to reopen? So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Ish.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Westland, and all my fellow colleagues. Thank you. I want to start by, on behalf of all the library staff and the Board of Trustees, thanking the community for all your patience and your support and understanding during these past several weeks. These have been incredibly difficult times, and I know that many of you are itching to get back into the library and start using our services again. And our staff is equally itching to get back in and start delivering those services again. But I just ask you to be a little more patient, because we want to make sure that our facility is completely clean and sanitized and we follow all the, the protocols that you've heard throughout this presentation before we do that. So with that in mind, we are planning on a phased approach to reopening that might go over the next several weeks. So currently we are in the process of actually cleaning and sanitizing the building. Vic alluded to some of the steps that they have taken in City Hall and some of the other city buildings. We are doing that now, procuring all the PPE and all those other, materials that we need once we start welcoming our staff back. So like many other libraries in the state, we closed on March 13th at very, very short notice. But we continue to provide some level of virtual services to our patrons. We increased our investments in electronic collections, ebooks and downloadable audiobooks and streaming video and even virtual story time. We even conducted virtual one-on-one tech help sessions with community residents. Until, like many of the other staff in the city, our staff was also furloughed in early May. So we are going to follow a phased approach that you see on the screen. So through the 26th of June, we will be sort of preparing the building for the eventual reopening. Patrons have begun to return materials that they've been holding with them. So we already have thousands and thousands of books and other items that have come back that need to be processed, in addition to hundreds and hundreds of boxes of new items that have come in that will need to be processed and become made ready for public use. Our second phase will involve some kind of materials pickup service at the library. We are still trying to determine what that is, but basically it'll involve us contacting patrons who have items that they would like to pick up. Just like you've seen curbside delivery services in some of our retail establishments. So along with the materials pickup service, we also plan, to start some kind of phone service to our patrons. So start bringing the staff back at perhaps 50% of their hours. And then through July 13th, what we plan to do is to continue the materials pickup and then open the building gradually, limited hours and limited parts of the building. Again, making sure that we maintain all those social distancing and other guidelines, and also the capacity guidelines that the executive orders have imposed on us. And finally, our hope is that once the governor gives us the all clear and we have adopted this very cautious and steady approach, and we all feel confident that, we are at a stage where we can open our doors, we will eventually open our doors. And I'm hoping that'll happen in early August. But again, all these stages, all these phases are tentative, subject to change. We want to be very cautious in our approach, as I've mentioned many, many times, and keep, all our staff and our patrons safe and healthy. I mean, that's the uppermost, thing that's in our minds. But so as we wait for those services to open up, I encourage you to continue to go to www.westlandlibrary.org. We still have some great resources that are available. We've seen an uptick in people even signing up for library cards online during the time we were closed. So we have been out of sight, but definitely not out of mind. And I think we'll come back stronger and even more, more exciting things to offer when we eventually open up completely. Also want to thank, everyone in City Hall. The fire chief personally came out and delivered PPEs to us. Vic Barrett came out with a bunch of vendors to help us with some of the cleaning and the sanitizing. Folks like Stephanie Field and Devin Adams have helped us in so many ways. And the list goes on and on and on. So I just want to thank everyone in the city. But most importantly, I want to thank all the residents of Westland for your patience. And, just be a little more patient. We'll get to you very, very quickly. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Ishwar. And so that brings the end of all of our presentations. I'm going to also, I was supposed to mention earlier on that the H2O zone, which is probably our most popular amenity in town, is scheduled to open to the public. There will be some restrictions that we'll talk about later. On July 1st, that's a Wednesday, so we'll be open and prepared to operate for the 4th of July weekend. And our goal is to also have the concession stand open as well. And as I mentioned earlier, the golf course is open for business I keep mentioning that because we need you to go out and play. If we could get everybody in the city of Westland to play one round of golf this year, we'll be in great shape there. So before I go to questions, and we had opened up the opportunity for residents to email us questions, and we have a few of those, and then we're going to go to those folks that are still on the line. I want to recognize just a few people. They weren't on the call here tonight, and obviously everybody that was on this call has played an important role, and they updated the residents. But there's other folks that have played a big role. Obviously, you heard Chief Stratner and Chief Jedrusik talk in the beginning, and they've been part of this 7 days a week, 24/7, and they were on tonight. But there's other folks too. I want to recognize my deputy, Mike Reddy, we call him MJ, Steve Smith, Finance Director, Dan Block, our Budget Director, Devin Adams, who is on here tonight, Craig Brown, our IT Director, Craig Welcomeback, who does our communications, and Vic, who is on here tonight. And the reason that I mentioned them is that we did have a lot of people that were working remotely, but these folks were at City Hall, and they've not only did their jobs that their department title says, but they basically had to do anything and everything that we needed to keep things operating and taking care of business. So they all really stepped up. And one of the things that we also did was we negotiated a contract with our police officers during all of this and got that settled. So there was a lot of work done behind the scenes, and those folks are responsible for a lot of it. I appreciate that. With that said, we've got some questions, and I'm going to try to go through these quickly so we can get to the folks that have been sitting around on our call tonight waiting to ask questions. The first one, like I said, these were emailed into our events email. The first one is there any idea about when the Friendship Center is going to reopen? And that's a question that we get a lot. We did not have our Senior Resource Director, Barb, on the line tonight, but I can tell you that Barb and her deputy, Donna, and a small staff, they've been at the Friendship Center almost every single day. The Meals on Wheels program has been operating out of there, and they've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes. The place is such a busy place, they don't really get a lot of time to work on the place. So when we do reopen, and tentatively we have a reopen date of Monday, July 6th, and we'll have to come back a little bit later with what that's going to look like. Obviously, with our senior population, with this virus, they have been the most hard hit by it. So there's going to be a lot of precautions in place. So they won't have all the events that they used to have. But I'll let Barb come back at another time to talk about what that looks like. But at this point, we're expecting, at least tentatively, to open the Friendship Center, even in a limited capacity, on Monday, July 6th. The next question we got was, when can we start booking pavilions for outdoor events? First of all, thank you for everybody that had previously rented rooms and booked pavilions. And we apologize that a lot of those had to be canceled throughout May and June. We've tried to refund everybody's money that's asked for it. Some folks have asked us to hold it, and so they can to book a room in the future. That gets handled through our Parks and Recreation Department, and our Parks Director, Kyle Mulligan, actually came back from furlough Monday this week, and Erica, his clerical support that works in his department, will be back full-time next Monday as well. Kyle is busy preparing the H2O zone and the concession stand for reopening on July 1st, and also working through the process of hiring our park rangers to help us support those amenities. Shortly thereafter, we will turn our efforts, and I think Stephanie even mentioned it as part of our phase 3 would be to start booking pavilions and indoor rentals and stuff. So I would say stand by. They'll have more information on that that very soon. Hopefully, if that's not available by July 1st, it'll be available mid-July at the latest. The next question is, this is actually a question we received at the city council meeting last night. I applied through the CARES Act money that the city of Westland received, and my question is, why does the city require that I give financial information for this grant? So with that, I'm going to kick it over to Joanne Campbell to answer that question, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The CARES Act funding comes through the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and all of those programs must provide assistance to residents who are low to moderate income, and therefore we have to verify the income of the people who apply, regardless of which of the aspects of the CARES program that they're applying for. So we're trying to make it as seamless as possible for the applicants. And we're happy to answer any questions as to what kind of documentation we're required to collect. But it is because the comes through the Community Development Block Grant Program, which is meant to support low to moderate income residents.
Okay, thank you. The next question, and I'm going to kick this one to the police chief, is who monitors if restaurants are not exceeding the 50% rule? Chief Jed Druzek.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Well, I don't think there's anybody that's really assigned to monitoring that. Same as everything else that was kind of placed in the executive orders. What we're going to do is, you know, we had very good luck with compliance from all of our residents and businesses throughout the city, and that's what we're hoping to do. Cases like this need to be prosecuted by the state, but I'm confident that we're going to be able to make sure that we're gaining compliance, especially through our economic development department. If we communicate with these businesses, I'm sure we're going to be able to get compliance. Worst case scenario, if they don't, then yes, the police department will issue fines if necessary.
Okay, thanks, Chief. The next question, I'll kick this one to Chief Stratner. With the improving numbers for COVID, if we haven't been tested yet, should we still get tested, and where can we get tested at?
So one of the things that you have to do is first contact your doctor, because some of these testing sites, there's a variety of them out there. The best information available is on michigan.gov/coronavirus or the city's website, which is constantly updated, and you can find the link to find a testing site near you, because they are everywhere. But every testing site has different criteria. Some of them will only take you have symptoms. Some of them won't take you unless you have a doctor's referral. Some of them require that you have insurance information. One great resource to go to is in Dearborn. It's the Minute Clinic that's offered with CVS. CVS Corporation decided to set up shop in the city of Dearborn, and you can go to minuteclinic.com for CVS, and they don't require insurance. They don't require you to have symptoms. They'll do a nasal swab through a drive-through setting 7 days a week, and all that they require is that you pre-register. That's really the best place to go. But there's a variety of urgent cares located throughout our area that will also do them. And there's two different testings like I talked about. If you want to know if you currently have it, if you're having symptoms, or even if you're not sick, if you may be an asymptomatic carrier, you can go get that nasal swab. If you want to go get the antibody testing, which is the finger prick where they actually take a blood sample to see if you have had it and you had the antibodies for it, again, the best resource is to call your primary care physician, and they're going to direct you to the right place, and may even do it in their office.
Okay, thank you, Chief. And we'll continue to update the cityofwestland.com with additional testing locations as they're made available to us. And earlier tonight, our Wayne County Commissioner Glenn Anderson was on the call, and he had to step off, but he wanted to share that there's going to be an announcement coming shortly from Wayne County, either later this week or beginning of next week, on a partnership with Garden City Hospital, where they'll be able to administer both of the tests that Chief Stratner talked about in a drive-up setting. There's no doctor appointment necessary. So as we get more information on this, we'll share this. It looks like you may have to do it by appointment. There's no cost to to individuals with or without insurance, and the results would typically be received in 2 to 3 days. So as we get more information, as that announcement comes out, we'll definitely get that information out on the cityofwestland.com as well. The next question, we're going to kick this one to Vic. Has the city's playground equipment been thoroughly cleaned?
Thank you, Mayor, for the question. I knew it was coming. As you know, Mayor, as your facility director, I pay very close attention on a daily basis to all the guidance coming out of the Michigan Health and Human Services Bureau, as well as the CDC. And at this point, there has been no guidance coming from those two authoritative agencies with regard to playground equipment. What I can share is the knowledge I've learned as being a part of this team, that the coronavirus, as we understand it right now, only survives on surfaces, hard surfaces, for 4 to 5 days. We've had all of our playgrounds shut down, Mayor, since the end of May. And we have strictly prevented people from interacting with these amenities. So I have to rely on the science that I know that there's no coronavirus currently on our playground equipment. However, moving forward, we need to think about this as parents, as we take our kids out, that the child that may have swung on that swing set or slid down that slide may have had coronavirus. And to what level do we want to protect our kids, whether it be with hand wipes and other things that we sanitize our equipment before our kids come in? But there's really realistically no way that we can police this and make sure that each child is safe from activity to activity. So pending further guidance, we're just going to rely on the wind to keep the virus dispersed, to not affect our kids, and hopefully all of our families will be cognizant of the fact that we need to keep things clean to the level we're comfortable with. So that's the best answer I have, Mayor.
Well, thanks, Vic. And I know that you're working with the City of Westland Sign Shop right now to have signs put up at all of our parks around our amenities that remind folks about, sanitizing and how best to utilize those. So, Vic, before you go, I've got one more question that we're going to let you handle is, are the bathrooms at Central City Park open?
As of today, Mayor, no. And there's a reason for that. As you know, Kyle is working hard to bring back our park ranger participants. And when I have people that can properly sanitize those restrooms each and every day for our residents, I will reopen them. Until then, Mayor, pending a decision from you, I'm going to keep them closed.
All right. Well, that'll be good news to Gretchen. I know that her and her folks at the farmers market are looking forward to that day. So the last question that we received prior to the meeting, I'll try to answer this one. This would have gone to Kyle, our parks director, is, can anyone talk about Little League baseball, football, or cheerleading? Any news out of the WYA on any of their leagues? One of the things that we have seen come out of the WYA is that they're starting to gear up for fall baseball. And the City of Westland has been sharing that on our social media. I would encourage you to go to the WYA, that's the Westland Youth Athletic Association, their website, and follow them on social media. And as they share more information about their upcoming leagues and how they're going to handle that, we'll definitely share that. And one of the things that we've done I think a pretty good job of getting our parks prepared for the public in a short period of time. Some of that had to come at the expense of our athletic fields. So as you start to see us put the finishing touches on the park, then our DPS crews, as they come back from furlough, will be able to go back and spend a little more time on those baseball and soccer and football fields. So that's something that's going to ramp up as we move forward. So with that, those are all the questions that we had previously. At this point, I'm going to turn over control of the meeting to Craig Brown, our IT director. He's actually the host of tonight's meeting. And Craig, I'm going to task you with trying to answer the questions that we have from our participants tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to lay down a couple items first before we get started on these calls. If you are using a phone, you can use #9 to raise your hand. If you have a question to ask, please use the raise hand feature in the Zoom app, or #9 to raise your hands. You can also use #6 to unmute your phone when you're allowed to talk. I'm going to start at the top of the list. I will call your name if you're using the Zoom app, or the last 3 digits of your phone number, and allow you to talk at that time and unmute your microphone. Please keep your question down to 1 question. Because we're so close to the end of the town hall meeting, I would ask that you keep it as summarized as possible. Also, we're limiting the time to ask a question down to 3 minutes, so we can get as many people as possible's questions asked and answered by the people that are on the meeting. So please try to keep it as brief as possible. We're also not going to be doing a back and forth, because we found with the Zoom meetings, it's not really conducive to that type of conversation. So once you ask your question, we're going to mute your microphone and allow the people that are on the meeting to try to answer your question as well as possible, or help get the information necessary to answer it going forward. With that being said, the first caller with their raised hands is a number ending in 017.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you for having this event. Question regarding the city's financial numbers due to COVID. What are the dollars lost and estimated to be lost from the current and next budget? Thank you.
All right. So the question was, what has been, I'll kind of paraphrase it, what has been the economic fallout to the city as far as from COVID? Certainly, I think from a financial standpoint, we were probably fortunate that we were in our 4th quarter. In the 4th quarter, the City of Westland has a July 1st to June 30th fiscal period. So in our 4th quarter, we typically at that point have collected most of our winter taxes, which are due in February. We had a good collection this year. I think our percentage was, the last I heard, like 97%. So once we get beyond that tax collection, then we're probably, most of our revenues are permit-driven, rentals, cash sales, the golf course, the ice rink, and then of course state shared revenue and court revenue. And so actually at the last council meeting, which was last night, the City of Westland, I asked the City Council to approve a budget amendment to bring our budget in line prior to the end of the fiscal year. And I don't have our finance people on the line tonight, but that that budget amendment was, I think it was almost $1.6 million. The bulk of that, because like I said, most of our revenues had been collected, were from the drop off in court revenue. Actually, I just got a text from our finance director, who is on the line. He said it was 1.5 million. The bulk of that was from our loss of revenue at the court, and also our overtime expenses with police and fire, which we have applied through FEMA. And that's one thing we didn't talk a whole lot tonight, but Devin and Chief Stratton have been really working hard to collect all of our data so we can try to get reimbursed through FEMA if that's possible. And then state shared revenue, which is something that's out of our control. And so we anticipate with that quarter, that 4th quarter, is that, you know, with that budget amendment, we're basically using 1.5 million of the city's surplus. We're hoping to get a big portion of that back. Our state shared revenue, we're hoping that the state uses some of the Federal Care Act money that came to the state to make communities whole, and we'll be keeping pressure on them. But moving forward, where do we go from here? Well, we're certainly ramping up operations at the city, and the City of Westland was the first city, probably the first city in Michigan that reopened our city hall. So Revenues are going to be expected, but at this point, it's probably too early to tell. So, Craig, we'll go to our next question.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The next question is going to be coming from caller Janine. Janine, you should be able to talk as soon as you unmute.
Yes, hi, Mayor Wild. I did call your office today as you instructed me to last night. I left my information. However, nobody did call me back. And again, on the PPE program, it does say the inability to secure. It said nothing about your wages. I'm not low income. I cannot find these items in our grocery stores or our local stores. I could drive to US 12 bar in Wayne and give them my business. I don't go to bars. I'm not going to walk in as a married woman when my husband's disabled. Nobody called me back. I appreciate what you're doing tonight. I just want to give my 2 cents, but it's frustrating. I'm an average American citizen in Westland. I can't get hand sanitizer. You have to wear a mask everywhere you go. However, Kevin Coleman did drop me off about 10. Thank you to him. I don't know what else to say about that, but you did not call me back today. And I did call your office and I did leave a message. I even left my address. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
All right. Well, I appreciate you calling my office today, and earlier today when we were doing questions, I did mention your question from last night. So certainly if you left a message here today, that we still have the ability to get back with you. And why we do have, through the CARES Act, we have PPE that's available, and there are some stipulations. We also have some donations as well, so maybe there's other ways that we can help you. Craig?
Yes, Mayor. The next caller is going to be Victoria Mabry. You should be able to speak as soon as you unmute.
Hello, Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Wild. I just wanted to mention that it was so nice of you to have this conversation with the residents this evening. It's so important for us to hear from you as our mayor and representative of our city, and from other people in the administration to fill us in, to help us understand what's happening around us. It takes the fear off of what's going on in the community, and it enables us to carry on with a little bit more effective knowledge of what's happening. Sometimes we get so busy in our own lives, we don't realize that above the water, the duck is sitting and it looks so smooth on the pond, but underneath his feet are paddling so quickly. And we don't see that. So you coming on and talking to us this evening is a great hope for the community, and letting us know what's happening, and hearing from our fire chief and our police chiefman. Thank you so much. And I know that the residents appreciate it too. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Victoria, for your kind words. And as you witnessed here today, is that there's been a lot of people working very hard behind the scenes, and so we appreciate your kind words, and I'm sure that everybody listening does as well. Before we go to the next question, Craig, Joanne wanted to weigh in on that last question as far as the income limits. Joanne?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So with the HUD guidelines, the income limits are for low and moderate income limits set by HUD. So I just will quickly share, a one-person family, the income limit is $44,000, two-person family, $50,000 to $50,000, three-person family, $56,550, four-person family, $62,850, and it incrementally goes up. So sometimes people see low income and they think that it's very low income, like some of the programs we do manage. But actually, the income limits are fairly generous under the Community Development Block Grant Program, and so sharing those here, and they're also on the application website. The income chart is there as well. People may very well qualify with what the income limits are.
Okay, thanks, Joanna. And I think that as the PPE becomes more and more readily available, that we're going to have other avenues to get our hands on some of that and distribute it as well. So thank you. Greg?
And Mayor, it looks like we don't have any more questions from the residents at this particular time.
All right, then I have one last duty tonight, and this was on behalf of our communications team. As we wrap up tonight, I just want everyone to know that this evening's town hall meeting was being aired live on YouTube. But when we close, it will be removed from the website until tomorrow. That's going to give our cable department the chance to provide a cleaner version that will air on WLND and will also be posted to the City of Westland's YouTube channel. They will not be editing out any of the questions or any of the content. They will only be adding graphics and resources in that video that I talked about earlier that we couldn't use, that wouldn't show up well on the Zoom meeting platform. So with that, I just want to thank everybody that called in tonight, that sat on the line, that sent questions in ahead of time, and all the panelists. Thank you for sharing, which I think was a very informational meeting tonight. And I appreciate your time tonight, but also your hard work all throughout this pandemic. And we're not over yet. So the hard work doesn't stop tonight. It just continues. And I appreciate all of your work and support. So with that, we're going to sign off and thank you for watching this town hall meeting tonight. Take care.